Well, a couple of things. The news around the likelihood that Shri Mulyani may continue as finance minister obviously comes with a lot of credibility, gives a feeling of continuity, and I think the markets have taken it well. Of course, it's not confirmed yet. It's just an offer that has been made. So that is good. She in the past has kept the fiscal ship pretty tight. But my sense is that if new schemes have to be funded, like the free food scheme, there can be a lot of repurposing done. We saw that the 2025 budget that was outlined last month actually had hints of that. They took away from the capex budget and they gave to the social infrastructure budget, education, health, and they also made a provision for the free food scheme. So I think a lot of the repurposing can happen. One last point here. The free food scheme has been inspired to some extent by India's midday meal scheme. And India's midday meal scheme didn't ever really become very expensive. It was a good scheme, but it didn't become very expensive. There are ways to work around it. So my sense is that, this team can probably spread it out, roll it out, but yet stick to the 3% fiscal deficit target.
Pranjul, I'm going to ask you, markets, international investors, foreign investors on the news, which surprised a lot of people. JP and I were talking about this, that Shri Mulyani is going to be staying as finance minister. That's exactly what they want to hear, right? It's a safe pair of hands. She's tried and tested and has a track record of being fiscally responsible. I get that. And probably smart move politically on Prabowo's side to do that. What happens, though, to that 3% cap deficit as a percentage of GDP, right? Most people know that that's sort of a red herring or a misnomer, right? Because, yes, it's out there and it's legal. But historically, what's usually happened is they've found their way around that by routing the spending through state-owned companies in Indonesia. Is that what is going to continue to happen in Indonesia, even with Shri Mulyani still back in the saddle?
Well, a couple of things. As I mentioned, I think a lot of repurposing of spending can happen. You can take away from some old social welfare spending schemes and put it to new schemes. I think that's one thing that can happen. The other is a lot of the capex happens on budget. Some of it can happen off budget. Some of it can happen via FDI coming from abroad, particularly the new capital city. So I think there are ways to work around it. I understand that 3% is just the central government fiscal deficit target. It doesn't include SOEs and PSEs, but still it's a very important number, and it brings in a kind of discipline that you're only able to spend at least on budget as much as your tax revenues allow. And if you want to spend more, you have to do all of these tax revenue reforms. So it still is very important as a source of credibility to fiscal mathematics.
Is Shri Mulyani, do you think, going to push harder or get back to pushing harder on upping tax revenues, especially from Indonesian money outside the country?
Well, look, it's never easy to increase tax revenues. Even in India, with a lot of reforms, it took more than a decade to bring up the tax to GDP number. Even in ASEAN, Indonesia has amongst the lowest tax to GDP numbers in the ASEAN economies. No sort of low-hanging fruit there. I think a lot comes with jobs, incomes, and better tax information networks, and basically it has to be via raising GDP growth that you're able to over time increase your tax collections. So in a way, you have to do all the other reforms, for example, downstreaming, increasing manufacturing, creating all of these manufacturing jobs, increasing wages, and therefore increasing your tax net. So yes, this will have to be something that's pursued, but it can't just be the finance minister's job. All departments of the government have to come together to make that a possibility.
All the government, yeah.